first of perhaps many podcasts for Movers and Shakers Unlimited. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted. But in the meantime, I figured, now that the dust is settled, so to speak, and we have a week since Dragon Con, I figured we talk about it. I have a couple of awesome folks on with me to discuss it. I have Natasha Williams from the Nerd Element. What's up, Natasha? How you doing?
Hello. Oh, now I hear myself echo. Damn it.
And I also have Emily Whitten, who not only writes with Movers and Shakers Unlimited, but also with Comic Mix.
Yep.
What's going on, Em?
Hey.
All right, so I figured the way that we could, kind of break this down, so to speak, is to talk about the different elements of Dragon Con. And I have it kind of in a couple of categories. And if you guys want to talk about another portion of it as well, feel free. But at least the ones that I have right now is cosplay, panels, and operations. And I figured we could talk about like the things that were awesome, like the pros and the cons of each of those categories. But if we get into, as I said, another category that you guys want to discuss, like I said, feel free. But with that said, talking first about the cosplay, this was my second year at Dragon Con, and I've had an opportunity to go to a lot of cons, over the years, and Dragon Con, I'm gonna have to give props where props are due. Like, I don't know where the folks come from for Dragon Con, but like, out of most of the cons I go to, their cosplay is on point. Like there were, leagues and leagues of impressive cosplay that was on display, and a lot of it, most of it you probably saw on my social media with Instagram, but like that still doesn't do justice to a lot of the different cosplay. But just thinking off the top of my head of some ones that were really cool, I think there was one from the I guess the freighter, or the device that Ripley's character uses in Aliens. There was actually, like, they actually had a cosplay of that machine, and it actually could work, and actually made the same exact sound effect from the movie, and had the light, the strobing light on the device itself. So like it was awesome. And they had a lot of people that were doing like mishmashes. I think one person did a mishmash of Freddy Krueger and a Ghostbuster, which is awesome. But what about you guys? Was there anything that comes to mind for you guys in terms of the cosplay that you guys saw?
Well, I hate the fact that you actually got a photo of Ripley, because I wanted a photo for myself, as well as another friend of mine who is an artist got like video of her like moving the machine.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, where was she? Why wasn't I around when she was around? I'm just saying. Like, there's just a lot of gorgeous cosplay. Like, there's like, again, like a lot of mixed match stuff. There was like a few cosplay that had like a like, I saw like a Deadpool of like the rug from the Marriott, just like,
yeah, the Marriott carpet cult.
The Marriott carpet cult, exactly. There was a genie that was like gorgeous, that had all blue, and you took a picture, and I'm just like, that's just awesome. I wish I just wish I took more pictures. I just feel like, because I was walking around, or I was like in a rush to places, like I really couldn't take pictures, but I wish that I did. And it's just, I got enough. And I had friends that cosplay. Like, there is that got a lot of like Akashas. There's a few of those. And
so now, was this your first Dragon Con?
Yes, actually, that's
what I thought you were saying. Yeah. So I mean,
it's Dragon Con, and
yeah,
a lot of people
crazy.
And I have to say that one of the things that people were saying about Dragon Con was the cosplay, and I have to say that delivered, and then some. So that part of it, as like the hype for the con, that part was very much true. The cosplay was on point.
Yeah, well, and I've been going now for years. I missed last year, Brandon's first year. That was so sad. He was like, I'm going to Dragon Con. I was like, I'm running the Discworld Con in New Orleans. I was super sad, but I was really glad to be back this year. The cosplay is crazy. I love it. And when you've gone to a few Dragon Cons, you get super good at the, I'm running to something, I've got my phone in hand, hey, can I take a picture? Thanks, bye. And like, you know, I did a lot of that. I do a lot of that all the time. So I did some cosplay, so I'm always, you know, a fan of my own cosplay, otherwise I wouldn't do it. So I was doing Kaylee from Firefly and Calcifer, which always gets, from the people who actually know what it is, they're very delighted to see it. And that's my favorite thing when I'm cosplaying is like, to have someone not just be like, oh, that's cool, be like, oh, you're doing that thing, I never see that thing. So that was fun. But the people that so there was this guy, I don't know what he was from, but he was dressed as a cross between like a hazmat suit and a lab coat guy. And he was in the corner where Velocity is in the Marriott. And he had put down like fake blood puddles that were like kind of something maybe.
Oh yeah.
Like rubber or something that stuck to the floor but wasn't actually going to be a problem for the hotel or whatever. And he had a mop that was dyed red at the bottom, and he was just continually mopping these blood puddles. And everybody was like, what? So that guy was, I thought that was super clever. I don't know what property that was from, but it was really well done. And it was a cool gimmick without being it was just fun. But I saw like a ton of the woman who gave me her spot in line, Brandon, during the whole Nick Frost thing, which we could totally talk about. The day before, she was wearing a "Hello, my name is Life" shirt, and then had a basket of lemons. So that was pretty cute. Like some people were just doing like clever costumes that weren't necessarily. I don't think that was from, like a thing. But I was actually looking. I'm gonna put in a plug for my Instagram because I was trying to look at my story and see what I had, because I took a bunch of pictures. So mine is the Emily ESSE, like Emily S, the initial but spelled out. And I took a bunch of pictures. There was a Rincewind on the first night from Discworld with the wizard hat. I ran downstairs from the Pulse just to see if it was a Rincewind, and it was, because from that far away I thought it was. There were already some Disenchantment cosplays. There was a Pebbles from Flintstone.
Yeah, there was a Flintstones, and including like the car, like that was cute.
Yeah, they had the car, but this was just separately on the first night, just the Pebbles, and then her boyfriend had a Fred thing that said like "I'm a keeper." He just had found a T-shirt to go with it. Oh, there was one of the T-Rexes that they have walking around, but this one was Bones. Like instead of being the dinosaur, it was like a skeleton, which was cool. I'm just looking at my Instagram.
And I was going to say, speaking on...
you can't see it, but the guy mopping up the blood.
I was going to say, Emily, like, speaking on that, that element of the cosplay is, the fact that you had not just... It wasn't just instances where it was just, like, individuals cosplaying. Like, you had families that were cosplaying together.
Yeah.
Like, there was one that still sticks in my mind, and I thought it was awesome that they did it that way, is that there was a family that cosplayed as horror icons, and I took a picture of it. It's on my Instagram actually, but
like horror movie icons.
Yeah, so like together. The dad.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, the dad was Jason.
Okay.
The mom was, I can't think of the character's name from The Ring.
Sakura?
I believe so.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, like we know what you're talking about though. Yeah.
Yeah, and and their kid was Chucky.
Oh,
and like the dad, if you look at the picture, like the dad was like holding his son that was Chucky with the machete in his hand. Like he's holding him in one hand, he had the machete in the other hand. Yeah. It was great.
Awesome.
Oh man! So I was reminded in my Instagram. I had a couple more. My friend Anna did the witch from Monty Python with a bag that said "I'm not a witch." So whenever someone would say they're walking by, she'd hold up the bag. She had the nose, the big nose and the whole thing. That was really clever.
There was a group of Monty Python cosplayers, and I wish I had taken a picture, but there were like a group of them at the Marriott, and I was just like, ah!
Yeah, there was the knight and the king and his squire who does the coconuts. Yeah, they were a pair. So like Brandon was saying, when they do pairs, they were a pair that were like going through, like galloping through the thing. And then on the last day, we were eating in the food court on Monday, and there was a guy who was dressed like a security guard or a mall cop or whatever with the blue shirt and the badge. and it said, and he had a sign that said, "Sorry, folks, con's closed." It was the saddest cosplay because Dragon Con. It was a great cosplay, but we were all very sad because it was the last like couple of hours of Dragon Con. Like this was probably like 2 o'clock or 2:30 on Monday, so we were like, "Oh, it's the perfect cosplay." We're all really sad now. So that was cool, and I saw a Taco Bell. So it was a full-on Belle costume from Beauty and the Beast that had lights in the dress, actually, which was really cool. And then she had a taco hat.
Oh, you know what? I also saw a cosplay that had like the cow from like Chick-fil-A. It was like, or like even the McDonald's women, I think from the Fifth Element. But I was like, that's so awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of like more traditional ones too, but like I get a kick out of those. Some people don't like the gimmicky ones, but I think they're hilarious. So Taco Bell, I was like, yes, I want a picture of you and the guy mopping up blood. I was just like, yeah. But there were so many, and they do the big groups, like the 300 guys with the beer can things. They were probably there again. They've done that for the last however many years. But it's like a whole group of people, and they make their costumes out of like beer cans layers. Like they cut it up and flatten it out and make it out of layers. Like it'd be mail, but it's like, you know, out of that. And then I saw like people with the Jurassic Park car, like a baby car, you know, like a kid car that you drive around. And so they had someone driving in the car and then people around as dinosaurs and stuff. And yeah, it's just, the cosplay is ridiculous and amazing. I saw someone who was an Iron Spider with the arms that like move like they were pressing buttons in their hands, but it was very subtle. And then the arms would move, and so that was really like the other legs, I guess, of the spider would move. So that was really cool. Yeah, there's so much to it, and like I've done more cosplay different years. This year I just did the 2, but even that, like huge amounts of people got a kick out of Kaylee, you know, Calcifer and stuff. But everybody appreciates the culture of it because there's so much of it, and you're just like a lot of people are there, at least in part, to appreciate the cosplay. Of all the cons where I've heard like issues with people being inappropriate towards cosplayers, Dragon Con usually does not have. I'm not saying it's never happened. Yeah, a few years ago they had it where there was like a football, you know, like there were football teams playing, and so all these football fans were there in the hotel with the cosplayers and the Dragon Con people, and there was a problem between those two, and there was some inappropriate stuff going on. But I think people who go to Dragon Con more greatly understand that putting on a costume doesn't mean you're losing your personal boundaries. So I'm not saying it never happens, but I'm saying that I feel like that element of cosplay, which does crop up, unfortunately,
elsewhere.
It's not something I hear about as much at Dragon Con. Definitely not saying it doesn't happen. If it happened to you, I'm very sorry. But so for anybody who's watching, if you haven't gone to cons, you haven't encountered cosplayers, touching them without their say-so is not okay. It's polite to ask for pictures of them. If you're in a picture with them, don't touch them in any place they're not touching you. You know, all of these things are, and don't take creepy photos. Just take photos that enjoy the cosplay, not photos from up here so you can get cleavage. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, right? There's people out there who are just not so cool. But at Dragon Con, I've seen people walking around in full body paint with like just a thong or whatever underneath, and people are just admiring their cosplay. So that's really cool.
All right. So moving on to panels. One thing that I will say about Dragon Con in relation to, you know, other conventions is that, and this may just be by virtue of just how the show plays out and how people participate in the show, but you know, you typically don't really have a hard time getting into a panel unless you're really hard pressed to sit like at the very, very front of the room that you're in. You know, more oftentimes than not, you can probably get to the panel a few minutes before and not even have to like camp out or get there a couple of hours early. I don't know if your experience, guys, were different, but at least the panels that I went to, and they were panels for like films and TV, like got there maybe like a half an hour before. I was able to sit down and, you know, enjoy the panel. And then additionally, in terms of like the interaction, while you may not get some of the exclusive content that, you know, perhaps a San Diego may offer or New York Comic-Con offers, there seems to be a different dynamic there where there's a lot more interaction. Apologize about that. There's a lot more interaction.
Is it time to go, or the cookies are invading?
Apparently it is. But there's a lot more interaction between the fans and the guests, and I think it's maybe because there isn't that dependency of showing something where there just has to be a direct, you know, connection between both. I don't know how you guys feel about that, or what your thoughts on that are.
Well, I mean, you know, like I said, I've been to a lot of Dragon Cons, and there are a few things that work there. I do think it's generally easier to get into panels, although if you're going to like the John Barrowman panel or one of the, like this year, for instance, like there are some big ones you still need to queue up a couple hours ahead for. But
not
if you're not, well, no, you don't have to camp, and we're all in hotels, so better, you know what, like, look, if you are a person who goes to San Diego and camps out for 2 days and you love that experience, good for you. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I would rather nap in my hotel room and miss the panel. Like, I'm not going to sleep in the street to see somebody on stage. That's just not who I am. But if that's you, great, fine. But you don't have to do that at Dragon Con. You can actually go back to your hotel and nap, which I have done many a time because, you know, you're up really late a lot of the time. But if you want to go to a panel, you know, if you're not set on sitting in the front, yeah, you can usually get in. And since I sit in the front because of my vision issues, I've had a different experience. But I will say, with the guest feel, I think there's a few things that add to that, what you were talking about, Brandon, which I think is totally true. One is some people, I think the guests are familiar with Dragon Con having a different feel to it. And part of that is with the Walk of Fame, it's like a more, like, obviously they want the people who are going to come and get a photo or an autograph and pay for it. But a lot of the guests are okay with someone who just wants to come up when it's not busy and there's not a crowd behind them waiting to pay for things, to say like, hey, you know, I'm a fan of your thing. I liked it. It was fun. You know, I think you're great, you know. And so there's some interactions that go on that are more casual there. And then there's also some of the guests like to hang out at the, you know, after hours. And so there is more of a relaxed feel to that. Maybe that translates into the panels a little bit. And on top of that, there are guests who have come back like year after year, like the Warehouse 13 folks who are great. They love Dragon Con. The show has been over for a couple plus years, but there's still guests there and people still come to see them and they love interacting. And so there's like that feel to it. And I think that Dragon Con has a lot of different tracks, so you can see whatever you want to see. So the people who are sitting in the horror or dystopian panel are really interested. They're not just usually, I mean, you can just go and sit somewhere for a few minutes if there's an open panel going on and you don't know what else you want to do. You might have a really cool experience. But the people who are there are generally really into the thing that they're there for, and they haven't had to wait for hours. So they're just like having a good time, and they're in the middle of all of their friends or cosplayers or fun stuff going on. And so that whole vibe, I think, comes across. And Dragon Con is pretty professional. Like, their moderators, generally speaking, are, if they're not great, they're at least good. You know, like, I'm not saying they're not great, but their minimum is that they do a pretty good job. And a lot of the time they're really good at what they're doing, and they've done it before with Dragon Con, you know, and so I think that all adds to it.
Yeah. Nat? Since you were a first timer?
Yeah, since I was a first timer. I did think some of the line situations were better than others. I think for me, because I like to take pictures as close as possible and not have to worry about, you know, like walking up or like rushing up, I try to be as close to the front as possible. So The Expanse, a lot of the cast was there. It was the first time they've actually been like at a con since the show was saved for Amazon. And so there were a few times where there was a line before the line, So, which you're familiar with sometimes with San Diego. Sometimes the unofficial line is there before the actual lineup. And then like for one of the panels, they actually like forced us to like move and like sit next to each other versus like trying to find our own seat.
Oh.
Which, yeah, and I'm like,
right, to get everybody into the panel, right?
Right, and I'm like, that's awesome, but at the same time, I'm kind of restricted. So it was like that wasn't my best like way to get audio and or photos, but I did the best that I could. But it was like it wasn't even like the official panel, which was ironic, or like the cast panel. It was like the it was like science behind the expanse, like or
cool.
Yeah, so it was a really good like panel. They showed like some clips from the show, like with their anti-gravity or like just like different scenes on the show that show like the science part of it or like the tech, and so they would discuss those scenes, and so that part was awesome. Again, because of the way that they had us forced us to seat, it was a little bit uncomfortable for me. But other than that, like again, like you said, you don't have to like spend the night camping out, or you don't have to like line up super early depending on the panel. Like even with Killjoys, which was on Sunday, I went to Hamilton first because I love Hamilton, the sing-along, and then I think, right? yes, I had to go. Like that was like one of the panels. I'm like, yes, I have to go. Especially after I just saw it at the Kennedy Center. I was like, oh.
Well, and I'm gonna just for a second put in a plug for how good Dragon Con is with their programming, because they will have professional guests who just talk about the science of it or something like that. It's great, as well as obviously fan guests who are knowledgeable or whatever. But I really love that, and they will kind of celebrate, like I said, so many different tracks that they'll have a Hamilton sing along. Like, why not? You know, it's a thing. People are fans of it. It's a group thing. So I think that's really cool.
In fact, I people are probably going to request that it A, be longer, and B, it's in a bigger room, because that room was like people were trying to get into the room. Like Hamilton is that popular, and it's deservedly so. Like I feel like listening to it right now after this podcast.
Wait until we're done, then we'll sing.
Okay, yeah. But I don't remember. I haven't everything memorized yet, but it's coming. But
me neither.
Yeah, me neither. But yeah, exactly. But it was funny because when I was lining up for Killjoys, like there was like one of the volunteers, and she was like practicing her hula hoop routine. I was like, oh, that's so nice. It's just random. Only I feel like I can only see that at Dragon Con.
Why not? Yeah. Why not? I got to the Nick Frost panel, and I will say one benefit of sitting in the front row is at one point he answered a question and he mentioned like he would some outfit he would wear, and he would wear a fascinator. And then I met him later, and he was like, "Oh, I was looking at you because I had my little calcifer on my head in the front row." So I was like, "What?" And of course, that was when my battery died, so I don't have that answer on film. If anyone who sees this does, send it my way.
You know, you're lucky that you met Nick Frost. He was probably one of the people that I really wanted to meet, but unfortunately I missed out on him. And because he left, I think it was Sunday.
Brendan, we have a story about that. We'll get to
it. I'm a little depressed because he's like one of the only people from End of the Badlands that was there. And it's like, I had panels all day Saturday and then all day Sunday. So it was like, I really didn't get a chance to go to the Walk of Fame. So it was like,
Yeah, I never miss the Walk of Fame because there's always at least one person there that like I definitely want to meet, and there's always at least one person there that I know and want to say hello to, and there's always a bunch of people there. If they don't have anyone standing around waiting for them to pay them for stuff, I'll just go up and be like, Pom Clementia, you were awesome in Guardians. Like, you were just awesome. That's all I have to say to you. You were awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Like, you know. But it's just, they're fun.
I was gonna say one other thing, and this is a small thing, and I think it's something that would be awesome to see at mini cons and I think it's kind of taken for granted, is that there was water, there were like refreshments, like things in the actual panel rooms themselves, and and that's not often the case. A lot of times you just have to go to the concessions and pay, an arm and a leg just to get water. But I mean,
and as someone who has run conventions, generally speaking, if you're in a hotel for conventions, that if it's not already in the contract, it's like nothing to put it in the contract. Like it doesn't generally, like it's usually expected in your hotel contract. And if it's in that panel rooms are going to have the water and stuff like that, sometimes even the little candies. And if it's not in your hotel contract, you can just be like, well, we expect water. And they're usually not going to charge you for it or anything like that. Like I had one hotel we negotiated where they were like, oh yeah, we don't even put it in the contract. And I'm like, okay, well, I would like it specified. But like what they meant was they just do it, you know? So that's a benefit of hotel conventions. I don't know if it's any harder with like convention center conventions, but certainly they ought to have it. They ought to have it no matter what.
I agree with that. I did notice that for Dragon Con. I also noticed it at other cons that did have their con at a hotel. Like BlurCon had water around. I even think All-Star Comic-Con had water a little bit, not as much, but I think that's something they could definitely add for next year. But yeah, that was very nice because then you didn't have to worry about buying water, which is, I mean, we already bought water and I was drinking like 90% of it. So don't.
Hey, it's important to stay hydrated. Can anyone remember the rule? That's the 5-3-1. I think it's 5 hours of sleep, 3 meals a day, 1 shower is the rule of cons. Like one per day. No, it's like the joke rule for cons is per day. I think it's 5-3-1. It's like get 5 hours of sleep, eat 3 meals, and take 1 shower per day. And the one that I never forget is the shower one. The sleep and meals I sometimes am flexible on, but you better believe I am never going to Dragon Con stinky. That's people who go to cons, all people at all cons everywhere, please shower at least once a day and put on your deodorant. I don't care if usually you're a hippie out in the woods. If you're going to a con, put on your deodorant.
Yeah.
So anyway, and eat your food, drink your water, and have your sleep. I'm sorry, I got to.
Indifferent.
When you give me a platform to speak on, this is what's going to happen.
OCD here, yeah, I would even do twice a day if necessary, but sometimes it depends on what I'm doing. If it's necessary,
do it more, yeah. But yeah, Brandon's regretting that he invited me on this podcast.
No, not at all. No, I agree with you.
It's just a general rule. Like, just take your shower. Like, if you need to, like, use a friend's hotel room briefly to clean up, let them,
brush your teeth now and again, put some gum in your bag, whatever. Like, think of it as if you were going to go to any professional meeting, but you're at a con. Because why would you lower your standards? Just always be clean, smell nice. And then I will love you, whoever you are. You'll be great. Especially if you're wearing an awesome cosplay. Anyway, so panels, yay!
So on that note, is there anything that you guys like just in general that you feel that could be tweaked or that you would like to see as an addition, perhaps, or in respect to the? Go ahead.
Well, like I was saying before about when I lined up for the Expanse and just like the fact that they forced us to like sit and we couldn't like pick our seats. Like that was the only actually panel that happened. So fortunately, all the other panels that I went to, you could sit where you needed to sit, and I managed to sit where I wanted to sit because I like the aisle seat because it's very awkward for me. I'm really awkward when it comes to like getting up and like stepping on people's toes. You do not want me to step on your toes, so it's better if I sit in an aisle seat. Why would you? So like I need to sit in an aisle seat. It doesn't matter what end of the aisle seat it is, as long as it's an aisle seat. That's just what it is. Oh, and also another panel that I have to give a shout out to, like a meetup, is the social anxiety. I went to that with my friend Cassandra because
shout out Cassandra.
Cassandra, who has a lovely accent that I would like to adopt.
Cassandra, I love you. Seriously,
I just met her this year with Nat, but she just has such a lovely accent. Cassandra, I love your accent. Hi.
Cassandra's great. But shout out to her. But we went to the social anxiety. It was listed as a meetup, but it turned out to be like a panel. And just the fact that people feel like they need their own space. And I'm hoping that Dragon Con is listening, especially because it was a huge turnout. Like the room was full. And so like there needs to be a quiet room. for those of us that are like socially anxious and just need a space to just get away from the crowds, because sometimes like the way that, you know, especially if you're going on the Sky Bridge or just like in the hall sometimes with the Marriott, sometimes it just feels like oppressive and just like it feels like kind of like claustrophobic because there's so many people that you sometimes need that space to just, you know, be by yourself. And sometimes your hotel room is your space as well, but sometimes if you're like in the middle of a con,
yeah,
well, having a quiet room would be nice.
That's a good idea. I was actually going to say, first of all, I use my hotel room for that when I'm nearby, but sometimes you can't. And I was going to say, so we all probably have some anxieties and stuff, but I'm actually really pretty fine in crowds. But even I had at least a couple of moments during Dragon Con and most cons where I'm just like, people everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah,
and I don't have, generally speaking, that problem. Usually at cons, I'm fine. I used to work in a huge amphitheater where I would have to weave through crowds to bring people their orders and stuff. Never had a problem with it, but just every now and again, it's a little overwhelming. So I get that, even though I probably wouldn't have necessarily been, you know, like self-identifying as having that as a thing all the time, because I don't, but I still feel it occasionally. Yeah.
Everybody there's definitely different levels. Like, I know just for me in general, like I like going to cons, but I also know that I decompress a lot when I'm back.
Yes.
So
yeah, I definitely get that.
So exactly. So there are definitely different levels, especially when people are like, they're socially awkward, or like they feel like they can't really talk to people, even though this is our people, nerds, Greeks, we're everywhere. And so it's like sometimes that social anxiety is there, even though it shouldn't be, but it's there anyway, because we have our own lives and our own situations that make us anxious. So it was just hearing those different experiences and just what people go through. I was like, oh, okay. And
it's lost my headphones. Sorry, guys.
No, and just the different levels. That was like really refreshing, because I know sometimes I'm like hearing, I'm like, oh, I've actually done that before, like, or something along those lines. And so it was just like really nice. And again, I hope everyone that was in that panel gave the, you know, panel like a 5 and just made suggestions, and hopefully Dragon Con listens, and they probably will.
Yeah, well, they're very responsive, and I would like to put in a shout out for their disabled program and services. The way that they do it is every convention that has asked for feedback on how they do it, I refer them to Dragon Con. So I'm serious about that. So like I have a sight issue, I have an eye disease, and I have special contact lenses, and sometimes it's fine, but sometimes it's not. I can have problems with the contacts like that, and then, you know, I have a whole bunch of stuff I have to go through. Let's put it this way. When I take out my contacts, I have to use little suction cup plungers. Isn't that great, guys? Yay! No, it's not. So I have issues, and then on top of that, if you have keratoconus, which is what I have, you can have, like with screens and light sources, you can have starring and different effects that happen, even if you're wearing your contacts. So for big cons, sometimes they have those screens, and so they can put you further back, and I tell them, I'm like, that's not going to help me. So Dragon Con's really good about it. You just go and they have a place where people can sit if they're like mobility disabled, and you take a number, and then if you already have your badge, it's even quicker. And like the guy who's one of the people who goes around and does it, I know there's a team of people, but he does it every year. So he's got, you know, he knows what he's doing and everything. And so they were very efficient. They put a sticker on your badge. And what I like about Dragon Con is mine says sightlines, which means she sits in the front row, so you can see. If I was mobility, it would say like mobility or wheelchair or whatever it was. And some cons don't specify. And so you have to sometimes explain yourself to the person. You're like, no, I can't sit on an end over there. I need to sit up here so I can see. And, you know, like if it's not an obvious thing, you're going to have to explain yourself. And they're supposed to be trying to make it so you don't have to. That's why they give you the sticker. But so I like that Dragon Con, like they will look and say, oh, okay, you go over there. That's specific to you. You only have to do it once, and they have you in the system. So I was in the system from before, like every year I get it. So I don't have to do anything else. And then they have the special line, which, you know, most cons by now do this, but they have a special line that you sit in. They let you in so you can get your seat and everything is settled. And I can't imagine how it is for someone who's got mobility issues and has to try and fight a crowd. So that is especially valuable for them, I'm sure. And, you know, like I said, most cons do the basics of this, but Dragon Con is just better at it. And especially with having the specific stickers on the back of your badge. So you're not showing the world whatever your thing is. It's just on the back. The front just has the little sticker sign. And I just really like the way they do that. I've always had a good experience with them. Shout out to Dragon Con for appreciating that some of us have weirdness that we have to deal with in whatever way. So
cool.
So when you saying parties, Brandon, I want to know did you go to room parties? Did you go to dance parties that are in the?
So like, I did a comedy of many of them. Like I did some of the dance parties. I did some of, I guess those are only real ones. What were the other ones that you were referencing besides like the dance ones?
Well, I'm familiar with the dance parties. So Dragon Con often has like a nerd band playing, or you know, a DJ or something in one of their big rooms, and they have, you know, themed stuff. So I know one of them I went to.
I'm trying to remember. I went to
not this year, but like 2 years ago or so.
I'm trying to remember. I went to the Bunny Hutch. I think that's what it's called. Bunny Hutch one.
And where was that one?
That was in the Hilton.
Okay.
Yeah,
you told me about that.
Yeah. So I went to Bunny Hutch. I went to Last Party of Alderaan. And I believe I went to the Yule Ball. I want to say I went to the Yule Ball. And I
had other friends who went to that one and I missed it. I felt lame. Oops,
and I went to the 10. There was a 10 Forward one that was in our hotel. Natasha.
Yeah, that was probably the best one music wise.
Yeah.
Who was playing at that?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
I wish I knew who the DJ was, because they need to like carry her for more parties. Just saying.
Cool. Well, they probably, I mean, it'll be listed if you want to go back on the app. It'll probably say what it was. I went to see Tom Kenny and the High Seas.
Yeah.
Which Brandon, you had seen them some at San Diego with me, so they were super fun. They were Saturday nights. Saturday night. At the Marriott, and that was really fun. It's like a funk rock soul band. I don't know how to describe it, but they play old songs from like maybe the 50s and 60s. Tom Kenny, SpongeBob, the voice of SpongeBob, is a really great singer. And then he has 3 backup singer women, and then a whole band of like a brass band and drums and stuff. Like not a brass, like brass players, not like it's like probably about 12 people, I think, or something. It was really fun. So I went to that. And I went to the green room, which is like if you guest people and stuff like that, and just hung out. And then I feel like I went to some other parties. I'm trying to remember where I went.
Yeah, I know. A lot of them, I remember, I could probably tell you if I went through, because I posted, I have all of them on Instagram. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, this is actually in praise of Brandon. Seriously. So what was that, Sunday? That was Sunday. So Sunday was a weird day. I had an interview set up and then they canceled. Okay, so I looked at my calendar and I was like, ooh, Nick Frost panel. Yes, I can go to that. I have time. Because then I had an interview after that and I had like different stuff. So I went to the Nick Frost panel. That was awesome. It was totally fun. And on the panel, he said, and I'm leaving today. So I was like, oh no, because he was, of all the people on the Walk of Fame, there's lots of really cool people there. I love lots of people there, but I've been a Space Cornetto trilogy, whatever fan forever. So I was like, I really want a selfie with Nick Frost. That's the one guy I'm going to pay the money and do the thing. So I went to the panel, then I had my interview, then the interview, I ran out of video card on the panel because I just didn't have enough. I thought I had 2 cards with me and I didn't. So I went to FedEx and I bought a card and I was like, I'm ready for my interview, and then the interview canceled. So then I was like, okay, great. Now I have time to go over to the Walk of Fame. The Walk of Fame was over capacity or at capacity. So there was this huge line and they weren't letting anyone into the line. So it was like a cutoff. So I was like, oh no, because then I had another thing to go to after that and I knew he was leaving and I didn't know when. So I was asking the volunteer, and this woman who had the Life and Lemons cosplay from the day before, she was like, oh, you know what? I'm leaving. You can have my spot in the line that wasn't cut off. So I'm like, okay, great. So I get under the barrier, and the volunteer was like, yeah, that's fine, as long as it's one person in, one person out. So I get under the barrier, I get into the room, and I get in the Nick Frost line. And again, it was like, okay, this is a really long line. You're gonna have to go stand way over there. And I'm like, oh, do you know how long he's here? And she's like, I don't know. And then like this woman who was like 12 people from the front is like, oh, you know what? My husband just left. You can have his spot. And I'm like, okay, great. Everything's coming up, Emily. And then I see that it's cash only, and I don't have any cash. I think I had like $1. I had $1. So I called a friend who I called like one person who I knew had been there earlier that day, and so maybe was still around, and she was not available. And then I called Brandon, and I said, Brandon, will you bring me $30 in cash for the Walk of Fame? And he's like, all right. so apparently, yeah, no, he just like thought about it for a second. He's like, oh, I'm in my room, but I'm at the Marriott, so okay. And so apparently, I find out later from Brandon, all the ATMs were out of cash, so he had to go to like 3 ATMs, different hotels. Poor Brandon, I owe you so much. We are going to dinner. We're going to go to dinner, or whatever, drinks dinner, or whatever. So he went through all this and went to the ATMs and got the cash. And meanwhile, I'm standing in the line, but I don't want to lose my place. So I'm letting people go ahead of me, and then I'm letting people go ahead of me. And before I got Brandon on the phone, I had tweeted out and I had said like, hey, any Twitter friends here who will lend me $30 and I will Venmo or PayPal or give it back to you like immediately after this. And somebody did actually say like, hey, but unfortunately he did not have enough cash. I don't know, he might have, I appreciate it very much, but he might have like misread how much money I needed. So after he went back into the crowd, I realized I didn't have enough money. So it was good Brandon was coming. But so I kept letting people ahead. And finally Brandon gets there. But of course there's like this huge line outside. So the woman who had been watching me do this the whole time, the volunteer, was like, yes, you can go out and get the money. So Brandon gave me $30 and then just went off into the crowd again. Thank you, Brandon. And I finally got to meet Nick Frost, and he told me that he had mentioned my fascinator for the front row, and we got ridiculous selfies together, and it was awesome. And thank you, Brandon. That was my story. It was very crazy. It was like everything was going my way, and then nothing was going my way. But then Brandon saved everything. Ta-da.
Yay!
Yay! And also I saw you guys. I saw Nat and Cassandra when I was on the Walk of Fame, so that's cool.
Yeah, that was like Monday. That was like the last day.
Yeah, that was very random last day. You know, you never know what's going to happen at Dragon Con. I have some friends that I didn't see at all. I'm sorry, friends. And, you know, we literally messaging each other, let's meet up, and then it never happens. And then I have other friends who I saw, and that's good. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But the thing is, Dragon Con is kind of crazy, and I'm a veteran of Dragon Con and have still learned my lesson that I should carry cash more. Actually, when I got into the hotel like on Wednesday night, I thought, oh, I'll go to the ATM and get a couple $100, and then I forgot. So,
oh, boo.
Yeah. So, but
I was broke, so I was like, I could not get any autograph or selfie or what have you, but fortunately the people that I talked to, because I just wanted to say hello, or I've met them before, and just, you know, they were really cool about it, so I was like, thank God.
Oh my gosh,
I've gotten an autograph before anyway, so it wasn't like I hadn't spent money on them before, so that part was good too.
Yeah, well, I would like to take a second to appreciate the folks who are on the Walk of Fame and are okay with people who will just come up. Like, here's the thing. I always try to make sure that I never do this if there's more than a few people in their line already and behind me. And if someone gets in line behind me while I'm waiting, which happens, but even so, it's only maybe 1 or 2 people because I'm only waiting through a couple of people, or there's nobody there, just walk up. You know, because it ebbs and flows. Even really popular people at some point maybe are just sitting there. And so I always do it when there's no one bothering them already, or there's only a couple people in front and there's no one behind me. And if someone gets in line behind me, I'm conscious of it. And I take a little tiny bit of time to just tell them that I appreciate their work, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And if there's no one there, sometimes they'll just hang out and chat for a little bit, you know, if they're enjoying the conversation. Or it's even sometimes it's just, oh, great, thank you, quick hello, quick goodbye, and you go. But I appreciate the people who are okay with that, because if I was to go up to every single person I like and spend money on them, I would not have a house to live in. So, and like the American Gods people were there, and I met Bruce Langley. I've met Ricky Whittle before, so I talked to him again, and we had a nice catch up. And then I met Bruce Langley and Demore Barnes for the first time, and they were both really great, and they were super excited to be there, and they hadn't been at Dragon Con before. And Demore Barnes and I ended up having, Bruce and I chatted as well, but we just had a long conversation, pretty much. And it was just great. And, like everybody that was there that I talked to pretty much was very, warm and generous. And like I said, I make sure there's no one standing behind me, because if there's someone standing behind me, I might be standing between this person and their revenue, and that is not as acceptable. So,
right.
As soon as someone walks up behind me, I usually am like, okay, well, it was great talking to you. I'll see you around. And, I go off there. But, yeah, it was great. I got to say hi to Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling, who I did their panels at Awesome Con, and they remembered me, which is always nice. I like to challenge them. I went up and I was dressed in cosplay, and I was like, to Tom, I was like, do you remember me? And he's like, you look really familiar. I was dressed all in cosplay, but he was like, oh, yeah, I know, yeah. I was like, you remember? So, but yeah, I like the Walk of Fame for the ability to not only get the autograph or the photograph or whatever, but also occasionally just to go and tell someone you like their work. And at least some of them genuinely like it too. A lot of them say they like it. I hope they do. I know at least some of them are, I'm sure, are genuine about it. And hopefully all of them are, so. Yeah. I like that. It's a good part of Dragon Con.
Yeah, no, it was, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Nat.
No, I was gonna say John Harlan Kim, who I love and adore from the Librarians. He was there, so he actually remembered me from Baltimore Comic-Con last year. So I was like, "Oh my god, you actually remembered my name! Oh my god!"
Yeah, some people are really good. Like and this is not to say anything against very nice people who don't remember your name, but some people are just phenomenally good at names and faces.
Well, it helped that last year he hardly had a line. So we were talking a lot last year at Baltimore Comic-Con, and that was like his first con. So I think that probably helped him to remember.
Yeah, that'll always help.
That'll always help. So like just the fact that he actually remembered my name, even though like he's been to different places since then, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
So shout out to him. Yeah,
awesome.
Exactly. And just just the different people that of course I met. Actually the guy that voiced Grodd from The Flash, like he was super nice. Actually, we wound up talking to him and we didn't even realize that there was a line forming. So we were like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. We didn't even realize.
So funny.
No, but it's like sometimes when you're conversating, it's like really like good and you're like, oh crap, sorry. Really are bad because we're really not trying to like do that. Like we're not trying to be those people. So it's like, oh crap. All right. But yeah. Yeah, Walk of Fame was actually pretty good. I enjoyed that. And it's not just this con, it's other cons too. Sometimes when there's like no line and it's like that they're part of like a fandom that you really like love, you can really get a chance to talk.
Well, I do it at other cons sometimes, but it's just the way that it's set up here, it makes it easy to do it without it being a big deal to anybody in a sense.
True.
And Marvin Jones was really nice. And what was great was I went up to him. I was Calcifer, and my friend Alethea was dressed as a very elaborate ball gown of the Marriott carpet. And he just he took pictures of us because he loved the cosplay. And he was like, oh, and like somebody later was saying that he had been showing them pictures of his favorite cosplays and we were in there. Like, I can't remember who this was. One of my other friends told me she had been talking to him on the Walk of Fame and he was showing her like pictures of all the cosplays and we were in there or something like that. But anyway, he was really nice. Like, a lot of them get a kick out of the cosplays that they see. And I've had more than one guest be like, oh, can I take a picture of you? And I'm like, yes, you can.
That's always awesome when it happens. Yeah.
They're enjoying it too. Everybody's part of the thing. And that's the, and I think also like you can, a lot of the time, sometimes the guests will be just hanging out. I ran into Randy Havens from Stranger Things in the Marriott, just the, the bar area, kind of walkway. And I knew him from the Fantasy Cruise, we'd met over there. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you were going to be here. He's like, oh, I'm just here as an attendee, because, he's local. So I was like, that's cool. So, you never know. But I think people, hopefully, the attendees who run into a guest outside of the table or the panel, hopefully are treating them like people and trying to be cool about it, because that, I think, is part of the vibe of Dragon Con, is that people can handle that. Like, oh, I'm like at various Dragon Cons, I have had drinks with like Jim Beaver and Mark Shepard and Tomo Pennikett and whoever else, and we're just hanging out, having a little chat, and maybe you just do it for a little bit and then you go and drink with your other friends, or maybe you end up hanging out for a while or whatever, but it's very low key, you know? Like, you're not in their face going like, you're my favorite thing. You know, it's more like, hey, this is fun. We're at the bar. And I think that's part of the Dragon Con vibe that I appreciate as well. You know, you see someone outside of their working hours, you treat them like they are people who are outside of their working hours, you know? So I like that about Dragon Con.
I've done that too at San Diego. So it's like, hi, what's up?
I mean, it can happen at any con, but I think that Dragon, it happens a lot, you know, and it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, I'm going to we'll talk a little bit more about operations. Seeing that we did have a release that came out this weekend. I don't know. I was talking with you about it briefly, Nat. That Iron Fist came out this weekend. I don't know if you had a chance to finish it, Em.
No, I've been traveling. I've been Dragon Con. Now I'm in Ohio. I don't.
Okay.
I'm writing a comic, Brandon. It takes time.
That is true. But you I don't know. Sometimes you surprise me. You still manage to get stuff done. So I
appreciate that. I try. I'll catch up on it. Yeah.
But be that as it may, I'll talk briefly. We talked briefly more about operations. If you guys want to stick on longer, I mean, we are almost going on 2 hours almost. We have to cut it short. I know it seemed like it flew by, so if you guys need to go off after we finish operations, that's fine. Because I'm gonna actually have Con Connoisseur Chris Pabon on in a little bit. Chris, you're good. But I'll have him on in a little bit to talk about the show, since he had a chance to see it, and I actually did finish it myself. So I don't know if you guys, like I said, if you guys didn't want to stay on, so that way you're not spoiled.
Maybe I don't want to be spoiled, and we've got dinner plans, so I'm gonna have to bow out after. But let me know when we're done with the Dragon Con part, and I'll take my leave.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So back to operations. All of us actually went as media covering the show. And I've been on both sides of it. I had an opportunity to kind of just see like what Dragon Con was about. I went, you know, as a fan first, and then I came as media. And, you know, there are, you know, elements of it that are different in terms of the approach, things that you're allowed to do, things that you're not allowed to do. And it was definitely, you know, it wasn't a learning curve involved. I won't say that, but it's just that it was definitely different in terms of, you know, what I've seen, you know, at other shows versus this show. And I know we had talked about it before, Nat, and we had discussed it to him. So was there anything that like came to mind, at least for you, Nat, since I mean this was your first year, but you also came your first year as media. So that, I mean, that's slightly different.
Yeah, it was funny because I was going to go as an attendee, and then I figured I'd try for press and see if I get it, and I did. So I was like, oh, awesome. So it was a little late in the game, so unfortunately I didn't really get a chance to interview any people from the Walk of Fame, but I did get a chance to interview some of the people that were like non-Walk of Fame folk, which was awesome. And I like that it's just like it's scheduled, and you know, hopefully you're able to make it, but at least you can schedule like around it if necessary, or like if you have a panel, you're just gonna have to miss it, especially if you really want this person. So it's kind of like a catch-22 with that situation, but I actually am glad that I didn't have to really try and approach people at the Walk of Fame, because that would have been awkward, and I guess that took the pressure off of that. So
yeah, and to clarify, you're not allowed to. If you're press, you're not allowed to interviews on the Walk of Fame.
So the fact that we're not allowed to, the fact that you're not allowed to actually kind of takes pressure off, to be honest. Yeah. And if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then at least it frees up your time and you're able to do whatever. So that part I actually didn't mind as much, because that just took pressure off. And hopefully I can get a few more people next year, but if that means I can do less panels, I kind of like the panels that I went to this year. So if I can keep the interviews at a minimum and just experience the con, that actually helps me a little bit even more. So, and then I can write about it. So there's that. I do get confused a little bit as far as like if I'm able to film panels, because I wasn't really getting a straight answer with that. Because if I knew that I was able to film panels, I would have been doing it. But at least
they
audio.
mentioned at the end of the Nick Frost panel, the moderator said, you know, if you have any clips or pictures, we'd love to see them or something. Like put them up on your social media. Something to that effect. So for that one at least, you were fine. I thought you could just film all of them, but honestly, it's been a while since I've asked anyone. So
yeah, I would agree with that too. It was a little blurry because, like, at least as a fan, you kind of have a little more leeway. But you know, if you're going as a person of the press, like you have to like be very specific. It's very you're given a set amount of things that you are not allowed to do. So you want to make sure that you're adhering to that. So sometimes in that respect, Nat, I would say that it could be blurry and making sure that you're able to do it or not. And more oftentimes than not, you may just not do it because you're not sure if you're able to do it at all. So
yeah, well, and also just the fact that they were streaming live. So I thought,
right.
And I think that's actually available for people to purchase. Like if you miss,
it's a paid service now. It's like
exactly.
$10 or something, and you can get the panels that were filmed and streamed. Yeah,
exactly. So that part of it, I didn't know if being media that we would be restricted because they offer that service. So that was another reason why I was a little bit unsure of filming.
Well, and also I think that this or last year, I wasn't there last year, but this may be the first year that they're offering that. If it wasn't last year, then it's this year because I don't remember it from previous times. So. I mean, they've always had Dragon Con TV, but I don't remember the streaming service being a paid thing before. So.
Gotcha.
Sorry, Nat. Go ahead.
No. You're fine. You're fine. And then I was just gonna say, too, like I like the fact that you're able to put in requests, ahead of time. I know sometimes with some shows, like you kind of have to. I hate to say it, do kind of like guerrilla style where you just ask the guests if you're able to do it, but in this case it's just more proactive and having
and
go ahead.
At other shows you have to like maybe chase down like 20 different publicists.
Right.
Here they have a system. You're allowed to now. There's two tracks. There's the media guests, the Walk of Fame guests, and then there's everybody else who could also be super interesting people, like different panelists or comics people, or I mean, there's some of the comics people are on that first guest list as well. So, but there's like the highest level in terms of people are probably seeking their time, and then there's a whole bunch of other really cool people who are going to be there too, who you can request as well. But the limit on the media guests is like 10, and then is there a limit on the other one as well? Like, I don't think so.
I don't think there is.
I don't think there is. And so basically, you can just go on the, if you've been granted the media access, because you have to go through and you have to be granted the ability to request interviews. But if you are, then for the media guests, then you just go through and you pick your 10, you submit your 10 requests, and then they get back to you on whatever is available. And it's the PR people or the, whoever the agents that'll approve it. And I will say, so as I said, I've gone to a lot of Dragon Cons. The first year I was as an attendee. Every other year I've been press. I don't remember the different experiences because it's been a number of years. But generally speaking, I've had really good experiences with their press room, and they're very professional. It's a good setup. They're good interacting. This year, unfortunately, 2 of my 3 interview slots got canceled, and I don't know. I know Brandon, you experienced because you were in the American Gods one with me, where scheduling stuff happens, but this was unusual. I usually have not had any issues like that with Dragon Con, and there's a couple of times when things didn't work out, but if they try to like work with you on it or something like that, or like I told Brandon before, like memorably, Jane Espenson, the one year that she was at Dragon Con, bless her heart, got stuck in one of the habit trails between the hotels for like 45 minutes because it started raining and everyone who would usually walk outside to hotels started walking inside. So we were there and we were waiting and she just could not get through this crowd, even though she was Jane Espenson. Like there were just so many people. So she did make it to the interview and still did it, but I had to leave for a different interview. So I never got to interview her. I finished my other interview, but she came to the interview like 45 minutes late. And it was just, sometimes things happen. But yeah, we had a couple cancellations this time, which it bummed me out a little bit, you know. But I did get to interview Victor Garber, who is amazing. So that'll be up on Comic Mix. I have to transcribe it and hopefully soon. But yeah, so I mean, like, it was a little bit of a mixed bag with that, in the sense that usually I've had an easier experience with my stuff being generally, they might be a few minutes late, but generally on time and just going smoothly and being like, all right, we've got 3 or 4 interviews in the bag, great, you know. So
and I was gonna say to add to that, you know, I completely agree with you. Things happen all the time. Like, it's just the nature of a convention. You know, there's so many different moving parts. You know, in all the shows that I've gone to, there's so many different moving parts. That's to be understood. I would just say, in that instance that you gave, is just if there is an alternative that can be provided, like just having that as a option, because I things happen all the time. Just making sure that you have, you know, something there should something like that happen, because
I mean,
it can happen anytime.
Like I've had things where I showed up for an interview at San Diego and they were like, "Oh, great, but we only have 5 minutes now."
Right.
And I'm like, "Okay, you know, I've still got time. I can adjust." Or you are in round tables and you don't get one of the guests because, unfortunately, you know, like all the other guests you got at your table, but they move them around and one gets missed. Or like you get 2 minutes with, like, I got 2 minutes with Joss Whedon when he was in the round tables one time, and other people had like 10 minutes. So it's not like a perfect system anywhere you go. But yes, when they can, they usually try to figure it out with you, and that they tried to do it here, but nothing ever came of it, unfortunately. Like they said, there might be a chance to reschedule, and then there just was not. So I mean, I honestly, that is on the scheduling and the PR people or agents who they have to work with and stuff. But yeah, it was a little frustrating to have 2 of my 3 interviews cancel. But Victor Garber.
Yeah. And like I said, overall, like with all the elements that that the show has to offer, you know, that I don't really have any like anything like I have all like positive things to say. I would just say that was the only portion overall that kind of made it a bummer, but overall it was a great con. And I think it also helps too that you know, just by nature of the con, since it's very focused on fans, it's very clear in what's done and the efforts that's put in different aspects of the show, that's what the focus is. So all right, so I guess we can cut it off here, guys, because we are well at an hour and a half. So with that being said, with you guys, can you guys tell folks where they can find you, and go for it.
I'll go. Okay. So
go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm on everything, basically at the Emily EMILYESSE. So Facebook, you can find me, the Emily ESSE. Twitter, Instagram. I feel like there's somewhere. Oh, YouTube. All of that. And I will soon have a website, but it's not up yet. But you can also find all of my old columns and articles on comicmix.com. If you go to the authors and contributors drop down, there's an Emily S. Whitten, WHITTEN. And I've got a couple of things up on Movers and Shakers, and there will be more soon. And there's going to be some other stuff that's coming out, but that's basically it for now. And soon I will be able to tell you all that my comic graphic novel series is coming out next year. I'm super excited. There will be, Don't know exactly when we're going to announce all the details, but we, Ben Fisher and I are doing a 3-volume graphic novel series that starts coming out next year. It is about tiny hamsters. It is going to be amazing. Well, okay, I don't know, but I'm having a really good time writing it with Ben, and we have a great artist, and we're having a great time, and it's very exciting. And soon I will be able to tell you more.
Hamsters sound adorable.
Well, I love hamsters and other tiny rodents. So, yay. As evidenced by my pet, who is a tiny, tiny, Chinese dwarf hamster named Lily. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. You can find me on all forms of social media at the Nerd Element. My personal Twitter is willcat12. Yeah, I mean, in our website, www.thenerdelement.com, we do have a few podcasts on SoundCloud. Just look us up as The Nerd Element, and we have several different podcasts like DCTV, TV Talk. We haven't done anything in a while, but we're going to try and get back to that. But yeah, that's you can find me there.
Cool.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. We have to do this again. This was fun.
Yeah.
But I'm probably going to end up doing a plug again, but I'm Brandon Choi, host, co-creator of Movies and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me on social media as well. So Twitter, let me see, Brandon Choi, ENT, Instagram, Brandon Choi _ENT. I will be at Baltimore Comic-Con at the end of this month. So all of us, yay! All of us will be at Baltimore Comic-Con. And then not too long after that, we'll also be New York Comic-Con.
New York Comic-Con.
But yeah, just keep an eye out. There are some other things that are still yet to be posted, at least with some of the rest of the folks that write for Movies and Shakers with panels that they've done. There's an awesome Star Trek one that is still on the way, so I'll just putting in the teaser for that. But otherwise, yeah, Nat, M, thanks for coming on. And till next time, I suppose.
Thank you. Thank you. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so Nat, you gonna stick around for our talk with
I mean, I can. It's just that I really feel like I have nothing to contribute.
Oh, well, be that as it may, I'll have a gentleman join me. You guys have seen most of his work on the website. I've given him the moniker of Con Connoisseur. So Chris Pabon.
It's a heavy mantle to wear, but I try to wear it well.
All right, so as I said, this weekend we had the premiere of season 2 of Iron Fist, and that clock again. Yeah, season 2 of Iron Fist, as I said, and it had I feel like it had a lot to kind of make up for based on how season 1, how the reaction was to season 1. Chris had an opportunity to see it. He saw it early. If you guys haven't checked out the website, Chris's review is already actually up. But actually, since this is Sunday, I also had an opportunity to see it as well in full. But with that being said, Chris, can you give your thoughts? I mean, outside of, as I said, you have your review up here, but.
Well, I think the first thing we have to say is that Iron Fist 2 is better than Iron Fist 1. And I think it's, a lot of it's because Scott Buck, who is sort of to TV series what Brett Ratner is to the X-Men movies, was no longer involved as executive producer. And that was probably the single smartest thing that they did. And I think the second smartest thing they did is that after watching The Defenders, they realized that the Danny Rand character works better when he has a strong ensemble around him rather than as a solo character. So they built up the supporting cast around him. That's why in my review I said that season 2 really belongs to the Daughters of the Dragon. And especially the women of Iron Fist carry the series. The first 6 episodes that I watched. I thought that episode 2, which was directed by the fabulous Rachel Talalay, was especially strong. But then I also enjoyed episode 6 a lot.
Okay.
So Is it to the level of a Jessica Jones season 1 or to a Luke Cage? No, it's not. But it's definitely a quantum move forward from season 1. And there are definitely moments where it lapses sometimes, and there's some gigantic whole scripts. In episode 1, for example, the Danny character signs this very crucial financial document without even looking at it.
Yeah.
For all he knows, he was giving away the company.
Yeah.
Or there are moments where he suffers some very serious injuries, and that's where you notice the glaring lack of Claire.
Okay, so I have to comment on that.
Okay.
Based on what Chris just said, commenting on with the injuries, there's more that happens.
Not surprised.
Past season, past episode 6, where I'm like, really? Like, they survived that? So yeah, I had moments of that. I will say this though, while it took me longer to kind of get into the flow of season 1, in season 2, it happened. I was able to latch on a lot sooner. It didn't happen for me. It didn't happen in episode 1, which Chris, I've told you this, but it didn't happen with me immediately off the jump on episode 1. I would say I didn't really start getting into it until like episode 3.
Yeah, I agree with you. Episode 1 is really, you can pretty much skip it. I mean, aside from what I thought was a fabulous change of dialogue over a piece of crab sushi that I don't want to ruin anymore because it was like really well written. It's really a catch-up episode of where everyone is, and there wasn't really a lot of substance. For me, episode 2 is where it really began to show itself substantially better than all of the previous season 1.
Yeah, and then also with the choreography, like the choreography in season 1, I felt that it didn't really pick up, or I didn't enjoy the choreography as much until they got to the villain for that season. It was I'm brain farting on his name from The Hand, from season 1. The lead. Yeah. Okay. Once we got introduced to that character, I feel that's when like the choreography started to pick up, and then when Davos came into play.
What did you think of the fight scenes, the kitchen scene and the one in the tattoo parlor?
Oh, those were great. That's what I was saying. Like overall, like the choreography was a lot stronger this season than it was last season. I'll even give props like even to the fights that Dan had, his character had, were a step beyond what we saw in season 1. So if they're able to keep up the momentum of what they did with this season, then I mean that was actually, I remember one of the sticking points for me and for a lot of people was the choreography. And I mean, you can't have an Iron Fist show if the martial arts doesn't work.
Did you think the Alice Eve character of Mary worked?
I did. And it's weird too, because like I've seen her in other things, and she surprised me because I wasn't aware that she had that type of range until I saw this show. So like I was already a huge fan of hers, but I have a way more appreciation for her range now and her taking on this character. I'm glad nothing was, which is something we see a lot, at least earlier in the quote unquote MCU. A lot of the villains were like done away with. But I feel bad. I should have probably just said spoilers. So I should put a big disclaimer: spoilers. Spoilers. But with I'm glad that with a lot of the villains that we had, that they weren't done away with, because we can always like revisit them. Because I'd rather it be a situation where like they were defeated and they're imprisoned, rather than it being a situation of, and while it works in the comic books, it's kind of like an eye roll when you see it on TV or you see it in film where they die and they come back.
I want to grab that thread of the comic books. One thing I really enjoyed was the cross-pollination. For example, let's go back to Mary, who is a classic Daredevil character. Mm-hmm. And I thought I would show off here for show and tell. We have the first issue of Daredevil where Typhoid Mary actually appeared. And so they took an element of their Daredevil mythos and they applied it to Iron Fist. And I thought it worked. And that's what I like, that they're not, at least in season 2, they're not strictly focusing, okay, this is part of the Iron Fist mythos and we can't deviate from it. No, there's some cross-pollination. And I thought it really worked with the Mary character. And I hope that's, you know, an harbinger of things to come. But even there were hints of doing this, even Jessica Jones season 1, for example, David Tennant's character, he's not purple like in the comic books, yet he wears a purple suit. So, you know, they adapted. And I think Marvel is very smart and Netflix in doing this, in which they take elements from the books and they apply to the characters and they fix it a little bit so that it comes across the screen.
The spirit is still there.
The spirit is still there. But I really enjoyed the cross-pollination between Daredevil and Iron Fist here. I thought for season 2, for that specific character, it enhanced the series.
Cool. And like I said, aside from like the choreography, we were talking about the supporting characters, all those things works. Was there anything, well, I guess we commented on some of it, but with I guess the continuity in some instances where it was just kind of shaky. And then I would just also say like, we understand that it's superheroes, but it's still relatively heightened. And there's some instances, like I said, where characters are not superhuman. They're just regular human beings. And some of the things that happen to them over the course of the season, I'm like, come on, like they.
Yeah, like I didn't like the fact that I think it's episode 4, someone finally makes a reference to Claire, and someone says, "Let's call Claire," and then everyone kind of looks at each other, and they kind of like do like this. And then everyone just accepts that, like, oh, okay, yeah, we can't call Claire. I mean, there's no explanation given. So I thought that was one particular weakness in the script. And
then I was going to say the only other thing that I would say too is in terms of what we have with the characters themselves, there weren't a lot of them. There were a handful of instances, or I guess a couple of them that I could count offhand, just off one hand, where something would happen to a character and it wouldn't be addressed for a long time, and then we would revisit that character, and you're like, wait a second, how did they end up there? And then you have to kind of like do the math in your head and be like, oh yeah, all this stuff happened, where it's just you want to make sure that through line of what's happening, you know, with one of the minor characters, isn't the through line of their story in the particular episode isn't lost, because sometimes you yourself as the audience member, the person watching, can forget that, wow, like I forgot that happened to this character like 5 minutes into the episode, and we're now just, you know, revisiting that at the very end of the episode, or sometimes not until like the very next episode. And you're like, oh, wait, do I need to rewind? And then you have to like take a second. I have to like pause and like, wait, how did they end up there? Oh, right. This happened, and that happened, and that's why they're there. So there were like 1 or 2 instances of that where I noticed. But
I mean, one thing I thought was a little bit too cliched was, well, I liked them showing the support group, but I thought having the Ward character having sex with his sponsor was just a little too cliche. I mean, I didn't like that part of the script. Flipping back and going to something that I did like, I like that we finally saw why Davos is so mad.
And it's understandable.
It's understandable. And I also liked how we saw that fight in different segments throughout episode 2, and it was also a throwback to how the Iron Fist character is drawn in the comic books, with the yellow mask and the green tunic. So,
and they do that before, because they've done that before, kind of like you were just commenting before, like with the spirit of the source material. Because I mean, even with Luke Cage, like his old school outfit, like when he first gets out of the prison, like he has the old school outfit. So I mean, they still have, you know, touches here and there that kind of still honor it. So yeah. Well, Nat, I know you haven't. Yes.
So can I completely skip season 1 and just go straight to season 2?
Yes. And you've seen Defenders, right?
Yes, I have seen Defenders.
Yeah, you should be fine, because they'll do a recap on that first episode.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much all I needed to know.
As a matter of fact, I recommend to everyone skip season 1 of Iron Fist.
Like I just, yeah.
I'll say this, you know, while season 1 isn't necessary, at least in my opinion, it's not necessary. if you want to enrich like your experience with that character, like say if you're watching Defenders, you know, there may be some characters from the Iron Fist universe that you're not really gonna know or have an appreciation of the history between a lot of the characters and what happened between them without seeing season 1. So like you can't
like
really
Colleen and the guy that she was fighting.
You're not gonna
I
really
would probably want to like see it just for that.
Yeah, you're not going to really appreciate it unless you see season 1. So if you want to have like an enrichment of like the background with some of the characters and their interactions, then go for it. But if you're like, if you just want to, if you feel that it's necessary, I don't feel it's necessary. I would say it's really more of an enrichment of knowing the characters and their history and interactions.
All right.
It's a lot less painful to watch season 2 than season 1 and 2.
Yeah. So
yeah, I feel like with time-wise, I feel like I would just rather just see season 2.
But I will say this, I do
go back to season 1 if I care.
I was gonna say, but I will say this, I do like Gal a lot, and she does factor into season 1. So I mean, I do like her a lot, and she is in season 1.
Damn it.
So for those people who have already seen Iron Fist season 2, let me ask you: habanero chips or teriyaki? Come on, man! It's got to be habanero.
Right. The former. Yeah.
Watch season 2 and you'll get this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're not gonna get the Post-its, the joke with the Post-its, or I would just say, just like Chris actually said this in the review, like you won't look at Post-its the same way.
You definitely will not look at Post-it notes the same way again.
Alrighty.
Be that as it may, but I think that's all I had. Was there anything you wanted to add, Chris?
No, I think they improved. It's not great, but it's definitely a step in the right direction for Iron Fist. I mean, I honestly don't know if we will get an Iron Fist season 3. I mean, I know that for sure after this we're going to get Daredevil season 3 sometime, likely in January, February of next year. So you know. For Netflix, it's been a good year, at least for the Marvel series. You know, they gave us Punisher, and then they gave us Jessica, and then Luke Cage, and now Danny. And
I was gonna say with that, just to close things off, they leave the show in an interesting place with what the characters. Well, I'm not that would be a spoiler. I'm not gonna do that, even though this is spoiler heavy. But I'll just say, that they leave the characters in an interesting place. Supporting and our title god. So,
if anything, hopefully they'll mention it in the other shows, unless they're gonna do another Defenders, which seems to be up in the air.
Yeah, I would be. I'm kind of skeptical that Defenders is gonna happen. We'll see. Based on what the news has been coming out with each of the Defenders themselves. It kind of seems like what happened with with Inhumans, where it was a test to see if it worked, and it didn't like pan out as well as they thought it would. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't.
Scott Buck also in charge of Inhumans? I seem to feel he might have been. Anything bad? I'll have to look
with
the TV series. I automatically think, oh my God, it's Scott Buck again.
I'll have to look that up, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, it still may happen, but at least for the time being, it seems like the individual shows are going to be what they go forward with, and they may just try to kind of like what they did with Luke Cage, just have cameos here and there with one or two characters versus putting them all in one show. I have my issues with that show too, but that's we don't have enough time.
But if any of you are viewers in the DC area, feel free to come to Baltimore Comic-Con, and Mike Coulter, Luke Cage will be there, and ask them yourselves, is there going to be a Defender season 2, and see what the man has to say.
There you go.
That question will probably come up in the panel. I wouldn't be even surprised.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. So we are nearly at 2 hours. So I'm gonna bid you adieu. Keep talking. I'm gonna cut this off. But Nat, thanks again so much for being on. I guess we will reconnect in we'll probably connect way before that, but next con will be Baltimore Comic Con. I'll also be with this gentleman here, Chris.
Save the clock tower, people.
All right, so Brandon Choi, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Catch you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.